that the defendant references to you another mountain trip. Was that the last hike that we saw you talking about almost a month before?
Yes, that May 6th or that text message, yeah.
Now he says here, Tony the Tigered. Did you know what that meant?
No, I did not.
Can you go to the top of page, ma'am, 51? And what does he tell you that it meant?
Flaked like a joke, yeah.
Tony the Tiger.
Yeah, frosted flakes.
Exactly. Okay, there is... Can you go to page 53, ma'am? Now, this is June the 7th, and you have just exchanged texts talking about each of one of you finishing prelims. I want to, you can take that down for a second, and then I'll have you bring it up in a minute. Where were you in terms of, we've heard already a description that there were 3 professors for 2 different groups, 3 students each, is that right? Mm-hmm. And the group that you were in, which time did you present? First, second, or third? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't remember.
How about this? In terms of you presented when in relation to when the defendant presented? Did
Before.
You know?
I know that much.
And how do you know that?
Well, because I was done and then asked him what he's doing. He was obviously in my same group, like the 3 same professors.
I'm doing a horrible job of asking this. Let me just ask you. Did you see the defendant in his prelim presentation that day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell us how that happened.
Because basically there's a room where like a closed door session where the professors are, and then the other students are waiting in another room, before they go in to ask questions, and the next student comes like 10 minutes early or whatever, and then, so there's some interaction.
My guess is you didn't really hear any of the substance of the presentation?
No, you're not allowed to, yeah, and you're not allowed to talk about it with the other students.
But you could see him?
In the room presenting, yeah.
Did he look to you in terms of physical appearance and attire and hygiene any different than he had at any other time that you'd seen him that year?
No.
In his mannerisms and the way he seemed to be answering the questions and presenting, could you detect any difference between that or any of the other presentations you'd ever seen him give?
No.
Okay, ma'am, if you go back up to the top of 53, you then have this conversation about how he perceives that he's done. You recall that?
Yes.
And then, do you think he's joking here about how he's done?
No, it's hard to tell, really.
Okay.
So, it's like an oral exam, and you can write down something, but, yeah. It's hard to tell, and it's intimidating to be in that room.
Did you know when you left whether you'd passed or not?
Yeah,
Did they tell you?
No, but I studied. I knew if I answered the questions correctly or not.
Okay.
So.
54, ma'am. Now we're 4 days later. Now we're at June 11th. And you ask him how he did. And he says no, and then if you'll go down a little bit more, ma'am, he says that he's probably going to quit, and then go down a little bit more. You don't know if he's being serious again?
Yeah, I thought he was being sarcastic.
Because?
Well, because normally that's not what the PhD program strives for, is to fail out their students the first year. So if you do fail a prelim, you have other opportunities to pass again.
Can you get us to 55, the second gray box? And I just want to ask you for clarification on this. He tells you he's quitting Fave Red. Do you know what that means?
I'm assuming it's talking about me. I have red hair, so.
Favorite red hair, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then if you could go to the bottom of that, 55, ma'am, you reach out to him again on July the 8th. Almost a month later. And you ask him, hey, are you back in California? Do you recall that?
Yes.
Now, before I get to 56, ma'am, can you take that down? Did you also see the defendant in a setting outside of school other than the hike that you did?
Yes.
Tell us where you would see the defendant.
I'd see him sometimes at the 24-hour fitness, the Lowry 24-hour fitness. That's where I sent this message. The last message it popped my memory, like, oh, where's James? I haven't seen him for a while. Wonder what he's doing, like if he's really quitting, like what's happening.
And when you would see him at the 24-hour fitness, over the spring, you would see him there at the 24-hour fitness?
Yes.
What kind of stuff was he doing there?
Sometimes lifting weights, sometimes, on the elliptical. So I would always initiate the conversation and say hello, and, they'd say hi back.
And before I ask you about the text from July the 8th, let me ask you, after the hike, and you'd had that opportunity to have that sort of one-on-one time in the conversations, and he drops you off, was your relationship with him in the hallways or in the school any different than it had been before?
No, it was still more conversational via text, but in person, still kind of shy, and I would always have to initiate hello and things like that.
Okay. Ma'am, can you get us to the top of 56? You ask him if he's going to California, and he tells you that he's not.
Yes.
And then can you go to page 57? And go down to if you go down a little bit there to, now, these are texts that you're sending him from 24-hour fitness?
Yeah.
He texts you this with the question mark there. Have you ever met someone with dysphoric mania? What did you do when you got that text?
It was really obviously we were talking about what you're doing afterwards, so it was kind of out of the blue. I looked it up,
On your phone?
Smartphones, yeah. So I was looking it up while I was working out.
And did you look at what the described
Yeah.
traits were and whatnot?
Wikipedia.
Well, so it's accurate, sure.
Yeah.
Did you see any of the traits that you read on the phone in the defendant previously?
Objection. Lack of foundation, speculation, improper opinion, hearsay.
Sustained.
Now, can you go to, ma'am, page 58? This is you and go down a little bit, please. Thank you, sorry. You tell him that you've looked it up, ask him if it's manageable, and then you tell him, hey, look, I struggle with some stuff too. What does he tell you?
Yeah, I guess that it was manageable.